My name is Luděk Němec. I come from the Czech Republic. I'm 25 years old and currently living and studying in Vienna or at the University of Vienna at the Department of East European History. I come from southern Bohemia, not exactly from České Budějovice itself, but from a small village nearby. And what shaped my interest in history were definitely trips or travels with my parents and grandparents, which we made from my early childhood. We visited countless places in the whole Europe and also in my home region, museums, historical sites, castles, natural landmarks. And very important for me was Šumava, the forest there and hills, where today Šumava is mostly a national park, nature, beautiful nature, but it also used to be a place where many people lived. People whose native language was German, who were expelled after the Second World War and whose homes, the whole villages there, were destroyed because of the Iron Curtain. And many of our trips with my parents went to those places. Along the border with Germany and Austria, I was always curious and interested about the people who used to live there but who are now gone somewhere else, and that then became one of the first serious topics of my historical research, those destroyed villages. Yeah. I was definitely lucky having very good or excellent teachers of history in my elementary school and then later in my high school. Those people definitely shaped my interest in history, and it was definitely a reason why I later decided to study history. But I'm not sure if I can identify some particular moment or place. I was born in Český Krumlov, which is also a historical site. Maybe it's also the reason why I love history or past in general, because if you are living there, growing up there, visiting your family there, you can see history everywhere, and the imagination of a child works really fast in these places. So I think that might have influenced my interest too. I definitely gained new perspectives on history. Even though I'm now in Vienna, I am still focusing on topics which are somehow connected with the Czech Republic or also with my home region. And I think it's a good idea to take new points of view on those topics. I think if you are a Czech growing up in the Czech Republic, studying there and researching Czech history, then it's different if you are doing it only in the Czech Republic or if you go abroad and try to take a point of view, for example, from Vienna or from Berlin. Vienna is a unique place because the historical research here still focuses on actually all of the lands which used to be part of Habsburg monarchy of Austrian-Hungary, and of course also today's Czech Republic. And I think the perspective here is different. And that's also my personal opinion. I would say that Austrians or Viennese people are also more interested what's happening in Czechia than in the other direction. Then Czechs are interested what's happening in Austria, which is quite sad because we used to live in one country for several centuries, but I think it's so. Yeah. It was one of the most influential families in the Habsburg Empire, a noble family which was based mainly in southern Bohemia, so again my roots there, but also a family which played an important role in the history of the whole monarchy or the whole Europe in some cases. So for me it's a fantastic or unique connection of my home region and the big history of the whole Central European region. So I think there is some relevance for a broader audience. When I research this family, I can also reach many people who are interested not only in the history of southern Bohemia, but also of the whole Habsburg monarchy or the whole Central Europe. I think the very first moment they were shocked, because they used to be a very privileged group of families, elite for centuries, and now, or actually already in the 19th century, their position eroded. But in 1918 they lost their influence, their political influence. In Czechoslovakia they lost their titles. In Austria in 1919. In Czechoslovakia there was also a land reform which massively reduced their estates. So it was a shock, and after this shock they were intensively trying to maintain their position. It wasn't possible at all, or in all areas of their interests. That's also the fascinating part of this story for me. Even though they have officially no titles, they were expropriated, they still maintain something exclusive. Maybe I will point out the story of Adolf Schwarzenberg, who was born in 1890 and died in 1950. So the first 30 years of his life he spent in a monarchy, then 20 years in the interwar Czechoslovakia. Then he was in exile in Italy and the United States, and after the war he had to stay in exile in Austria and partly also in Africa. So during these 60 years of his life he experienced several regimes, several expropriations of his family property by the Nazis in 1940 and by the Czechoslovak state in 1947. And I think his life, which was not very long, also illustrates the whole story of the nobility in the period I'm focusing on during my research, because their world transformed completely. At the beginning of his life, he was a privileged boy from one of the most influential families. In the end of his life, 60 years later, he was still quite a rich guy, but he lost quite a big part of his properties. He lost his privileges. He lost almost everything he had 60 years before. That's a hard question. There were like two lines of the Schwarzenberg family. One of them was rather oriented on Czech nation, and Karel Schwarzenberg was part of this line. The other one was more transnational, I would say, oriented also more on Vienna than Prague, and also more on Austria than the Czech society. But in general, I would say that the question of nationality is one of the topics I want to focus on during my research, because it's still a big question. Those people had their estates in Bohemia, in Moravia, Austria, Germany. It's hard to say if they were Czechs, Austrians or Germans. They were patriots, land patriots. They felt connected with Bohemia as a land, but it's the question if they also felt connected to Czechoslovakia as a state. In some cases probably yes, in some cases rather no. And I'm not able to answer this question properly, because there is simply not enough research done on it yet. I think there are different strategies of the families. As I already mentioned, there was a land reform in the Czechoslovakia which started in 1919 and took over 20 years to be done. And during these years, almost every of the noble family lost quite a big part of their estates, which also influenced their relationship between to the Czechoslovak state. That was also the case of Adolf Schwarzenberg, who I mentioned before. On the other hand, in the 1930s, they realized that the Czechoslovak state or the republic in general is not really a friend of nobility, but that there is also a bigger danger. And the name of this danger was National Socialism in Germany and Adolf Hitler. And that was the point where they started to sympathize with the Czechoslovak Republic, because they realized that that's the right side in this political situation. Many of Czech noblemen signed 3 declarations of Czech and Moravian nobility in 1938 and 1939, which was kind of manifestation of their loyalty to the Czech nation and Czechoslovak country. Many of them were then persecuted by the Nazis because of these signatures under these declarations, and many of them were also expropriated later by the Czechoslovak state. So it was a really turbulent period for these families. And what's also surprising for me that is the fact that even though they were expropriated in some cases several times, and also by the Czechoslovak state, they still remain patriots. And after, in some cases, 40, sometimes also more years in exile during the communism, they were still ready to come back after 1989 and somehow help their home country. We can trace those stereotypes already in the 19th century, and from time to time they are being reactivated, especially after 1918 and after 1945. Those negative attitudes towards nobility were extremely strong. But on the other hand, it's a tradition for many Czech families that in the summer or during holidays they visit castles, aristocratic sites. There is like this quite specific Czech thing that you are not only visiting those castles as museums, but you are also doing guided tours. You are learning about those families, and you are learning about apartments where they used to live. So I would say that there are also many sympathies for these families, or at least some kind of curiosity about their lifestyle and their history. And in this point, I also see a potential for my research, and it's important thing for me that I also have some broader audience, broader public. I don't want to present my research only in front of other scholars or academic public, but also in front of some broader public. And I think this interest in nobility, which is quite strong in Czechia but also in Austria, is a good opportunity I can use to present it. Well, the first point is that those families used to influence our history really massively. There were important players in the politics, etc. The second point is that maybe the fact that we are now living in times full of changes, we can learn something from the nobility, because they also lived in times with several important changes, especially in the first half of the 20th century. As I already mentioned, they as an elite had to deal with several transformations, and I think we can take some lectures from their behavior and their strategies. It's definitely inspiring. I always like, when I'm doing research on some topic, I always like to visit the places which are somehow connected to this topic. If I'm writing about some family, I like to visit their castles or palaces to see where those people I'm researching used to live. So that's in this case, Vienna has many opportunities, because almost every important noble family also had or has a palais or some other estates in Vienna or nearby. On the other hand, Vienna is not only a historical city, it's also a city which can combine these historical aspects with modern ways of living, and I think it's sad to put it like that, but that's also a kind of unique thing in Europe. Even today, I'm really enjoying this part because it's a wonderful place to live.